There's this one single super dramatic verse in the book of Revelation that paints this incredible picture. You've got powerful kings just weeping as they watch a great city get completely consumed by fire. So today, we're going to unpack this prophecy. We'll find out who these kings were, what city was burning, and why its destruction is still a big deal.
All right, here it is. Revelation 18, verse 9. Just listen to the language here. Lived deliciously, bewail her, the smoke of her burning. It's so cinematic, isn't it? It sets the scene of immense power and then just sudden, catastrophic loss. But once you get past the drama, it really makes you ask a few questions.
So right away, we're hit with a puzzle. Who exactly are these powerful kings of the earth? And what's this great city, this her that they're all mourning? To get to the bottom of this, we've got to break it down, piece by piece. Let's start with the kings themselves.
Okay, let's start with the key players in this whole drama, the weeping kings. The text makes it pretty clear. They weren't just innocent bystanders, right? They were deeply, deeply connected to this city's fate. So who were they, really?
The original Greek term is basileis tes gas, and according to our sources, this isn't just talking about literal Roman emperors or kings with crowns. No, it's a much broader term. It's for the entire ruling class, both the political leaders and this is crucial, the religious authorities. So you got to think about the powerful groups of that time, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Herodians. They were all kings in their own right, holding all sorts of power and influence inside the system.
So if these kings are the elites, the powerful people, what exactly was their deal with the burning city? The verse accuses them of two very specific things that tied them to its destiny.
And the text gets really specific here. First, committed fornication. Now, in a spiritual context like this, that's not physical. It means being unfaithful, betraying God in exchange for worldly power and influence. And second, they lived deliciously. The Greek word for that, straniao, paints a picture of a life of just corrupt luxury, of reveling in excess and feeding the flesh. Basically, they chose the system over God because, well, the system paid better.
Our sources actually connect this whole idea directly to a quote from 1 John, and it just perfectly defines what living deliciously is all about. It's when you prioritize the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. The very things this corrupt system was offering its partners in spades.
Now, let's turn to that really haunting image at the end of the verse, the smoke. This isn't just any old fire. That smoke carries a really profound symbolic meaning here.
See, the smoke is like a public announcement that the judgment is over and it's irreversible. It's the visual proof that this once great system is just gone, totally consumed, burned down to nothing but ash. There is absolutely no coming back from this. It's final.
This is fascinating. The source material points out a direct parallel to another huge story of divine judgment, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. In Genesis, Abraham looks back and sees the smoke rising as the smoke of a furnace. That connection is totally intentional. It frames the fall of this city as an act of absolute, undeniable divine wrath. Okay, so we've got the players, we know their crimes, we understand the symbol of their downfall. Now it's time for the big reveal. This is where the source's interpretation connects all the dots and solves the central mystery of the burning city. So here's the billion-dollar question. Is John writing about some distant, future, end-of-the-world scenario? Or is he describing something his original audience would have instantly recognized? Well, the sources we're looking at argue really strongly for the second option. The interpretation from our sources points squarely at one historical event, the absolute catastrophe of 70 AD. See, decades after Jesus himself prophesied that Jerusalem's house would be left desolate, the city revolted against Rome. And the result? The Roman legions came in, besieged the city, destroyed the Second Temple, and burned Jerusalem to the ground. The smoke, it was very, very real. And the sources give us this quote from the Gospel of Luke as even more evidence. This very specific prophecy about Jerusalem being surrounded by armies would have been a vivid and pretty recent memory for those early Christians. The fall of Jerusalem wasn't just some political event for them, it was the fulfillment of prophecy. It was the visible, fiery end of the entire Old Covenant system. So, this brings us to the final piece of our puzzle, the king's reaction. They're weeping, they're wailing, but why? What is the real reason for all their grief?
When you really break down why they're crying, it reveals everything. First, they are watching their entire source of power literally go up in flames. Second, they're mourning all their personal perks, the wealth, the prestige, that delicious living. So their grief, it's completely self-centered. This isn't the sorrow of someone who is sorry for what they did. Not at all.
Let's be clear. The kings aren't weeping because they betrayed God. No, they're weeping because they lost their investment. Their tears are for the fall of a corrupt but very profitable system, not for their own role in making it corrupt. All right, let's wrap this up and put all the pieces together. The fornication was spiritual unfaithfulness. The delicious living was all that worldly indulgence. The smoke was the undeniable proof of judgment, which, according to our sources, was historically fulfilled in the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And the king's lament, it was purely selfish, a cry over lost power, not sin.
So what's the big takeaway here? Ultimately, this verse serves as a really powerful statement. The systems we build on human pride, on compromise, on corruption, the glory of man, they're all temporary. They are destined to fall. And in contrast, the sources suggest the spiritual kingdom that these kings rejected is presented as the one thing that actually lasts forever.
And that, of course, leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. If this Babylon represents a specific corrupt system that fell back in 70 AD, what does that pattern tell us about other powerful, corrupt systems we see throughout history, and maybe even today? It's definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.